Why do so many expensive, well-built new houses look off and confused? Meanwhile, the 100-euro house down the street feels calm, balanced, and resolved. The difference comes down to a handful of specific principles that traditional builders understood and that new houses ignore. So today, I'm breaking down exactly what these principles are with plans, diagrams, and photos. So whether you're building, renovating, or you just want to understand why some houses look right, there's a decent chance I'll change how you see every house that you drive past. A facade works best when it has a clear visual logic. So every element, windows, doors, roof lines, chimneys, should relate to the others in a consistent way. When this doesn't happen, the house starts to look like it was designed by 5 different people on a group project who didn't really like each other. So let's take a look at these 2 houses. They both have gable roofs, 5 bays, pedimented porticos, and dormers. Yet, one feels more balanced and resolved than the other. In the weaker example, the dormers are oversized relative to the windows below them. The portico feels too grand for the rest of the facade, and the windows are spaced unevenly, with some pushed too close to the corners. In a better example, I think the relationships between all these elements are much clearer. The windows are spaced with consistent margins from the corners. The dormers are scaled appropriately to the windows beneath them. The entrance is prominent, but it doesn't overpower the composition. Your eye is constantly looking for patterns and relationships. And when those relationships are missing or contradictory, you sense that something is off, even if you can't quite explain why. So when it comes to designing your house, step back and check the overall composition and relationship of each element to each other. Do the windows align vertically and horizontally? Do their sizes follow some kind of order? Is there one focal point, one dominant element, which is usually the front door, that the rest of the facade supports rather than competes with? Even if you've never studied engineering, you've spent your whole life watching things hold up and fall down. There is a physics engine running in your head. You know when something looks like it possibly couldn't stand and support itself. Look at these examples. A brick lintel spanning way too wide, real brick could never carry that. It would drop straight into the room. A fake stone arch drawn so the stones would collapse if the walls were actually stone. Columns so fat they're obviously not holding up the little beam above them. And then the opposite, toothpick columns under a massive entablature that look like they'd snap any second. These all look wrong to us. When you're designing the element of your house, ask yourself, could this actually do the job it looks like it's doing? Then step back and ask the same of the entire wall. Does it still read as solid enough to hold itself up? Most elements in traditional architecture existed for practical reasons, and over time, many of these elements have become largely decorative. When that happens, it's easy to lose sight of a basic principle, which is that a good traditional building should still feel fit for purpose. You sometimes see a small gable or pediment placed above a window. The head of the window sits well below the line of the eaves. There's no practical reason for it to be here. The only real justification for a gable over a window is to make room for the window within a sloping roof. And when you don't need to do this, the gable becomes purely decorative and kind of unnecessary. Shutters are another common case. Historically, they provided security and protection from the weather, but today they are frequently too small to cover the window and are fixed flat to the wall several inches away from the window. If they can't actually function, it's usually better not to use them. So, for every element you're considering, ask yourself, what was this originally for? Could it still do that job? If the answer is no, and it now only exists as decoration, be honest about whether it's adding anything to the design of your house or it's just creating visual noise and confusing your brain. Even when the windows are the right shape and size, when the spacing between them is wrong, it can also ruin the composition. Windows placed too close to the corners make the facade feel stretched and unstable. Windows crowded too close to the center makes it feel cramped and bunched up. Consistent, even spacing usually produces the most harmonious and balanced results. So a good practical test is to imagine folding shutters back on either side of every window. If the imaginary shutters would overlap, then the windows might be too close together. But if there's a large empty gap between them, they also might be too far apart. Consistent spacing that gives each window reasonable breathing room from both its neighbors and the corners of the building tends to produce the most pleasing result. And who doesn't want to have a pleasing house? Pleasing sounds so polite. I would like to live in a house that's very polite to me. Many new buildings appear flat and bland, while older buildings often feel rich and alive, and the difference comes down to texture, shadow, and whether it has a sense of substance to the walls. The most noticeable difference is usually at the windows. Traditional load-bearing walls were thick. When the window is set back even a few inches into the wall, it creates a reveal, and that reveal throws a shadow line around the opening and makes the wall feel thicker and more substantial. By contrast, modern windows are often mounted flush with the exterior. This makes a wall read as a thin surface rather than solid construction. This matters because depth is one of the main ways our eyes judge whether something is solid or thin, permanent or temporary. And once you start noticing this, it becomes very hard to unsee. So if you want your house to feel really like permanent and substantial, set your windows back from the face of the wall rather than mounting them flush. And choose materials with real texture instead of flat, uniform ones. Allow overhangs, reveals, and planting to do the work of casting shadow across the facade. Obviously, if you're designing a house that is supposed to be super minimalistic and it's all about clean lines, flat edges, no shadows, these principles will not apply. But if you want a more traditionally beautiful, permanent feeling building, then I think it's really worth asking yourself how to introduce more depth and shadow and texture into the building. Climate is one of the most important factors in deciding how large to make your openings. Imagine a place like Amsterdam where the climate is mild and daylight is limited. This combination gives you canal houses which features very large windows that occupy as much of the facade as the structure will allow, because the goal is to bring in maximum amount of light without weakening the building. But in hotter, drier climates, the opposite is true. Windows are kept deliberately small, so the building acts like a cave, staying cool in the fierce summer heat and retaining warmth during much colder winter nights. I know that we now live in the age where you can create an artificial environment in your building so it's the perfect temperature, unless you live in Northern Europe, in which case there is no AC and you just suffer through the heat wave. But I think it still makes sense for the design of it to relate to the regional climate. It makes the house feel more natural and connected to the landscape. As a general rule in traditional architecture, windows want to be taller than they are wider. This isn't a completely rigid rule because there are vernacular buildings that sometimes use longer and lower openings, and also of course a lot of modern buildings too. But in general, I would say vertical openings are preferred because I think they just look more aesthetically pleasing to us. Look at these two houses. The top one has horizontal windows that are wider than they are tall. The whole facade looks a bit tired and sunken. And in the bottom house, in comparison, it just looks a lot more elegant, composed, and alert. The same principle applies one level down in the glazing itself. Squat horizontal panes tend to look heavy and wrong, whereas vertically proportioned panes look a bit more natural. And when you do need a wide opening, such as a large multi-pane window, it's usually better to break it up with vertical subdivisions. Part of the reason for this is structural habit. So for most of history, it was quite difficult to span wide openings, so tall, narrow windows became the norm, and then our eye came to accept the proportion as more correct. So default to vertical proportions for windows wherever possible, and if a room genuinely needs a wide window, subdivide it vertically so the eye still reads the rhythm of upright elements rather than one heavy horizontal opening. Of course, there are exceptions where you have very beautiful designs with horizontal windows, but this is a very intentional choice. If you just want to rely on the default choice without overthinking it, Vertical openings just look a bit better than horizontal ones. On a well-composed facade, the openings are connected by regulating lines. The most important regulating line is usually the head height, so the top of the openings. Aligning the top of doors and windows creates a sense of order across the facade. Doors are often slightly shorter than the windows, which is acceptable, but to correct it, you could also add a panel or transom above the door to help maintain the line. If you want to quickly and easily test out facade designs, you could either do it the way architects traditionally did, with bodies sprawled across massive rolls of paper, drawing everything out by hand, or you can do it a much quicker, easier and cheaper way with rayon design. Rayon design is a CAD platform built for interior designers and architects. It's currently one of my favorite tools and today's sponsor. Rayon design is frictionless to start. You don't have to download anything. It's web-based, so you can just open it and start designing. You can import your existing files or start from scratch, create accurate technical drawings, schematic designs, detailed plans, millwork, and turn them into client-ready presentations without ever leaving Rayon. If you are a professional, normally bouncing between so many different programs for drawing, rendering, presentations, schedules, Rayon Design condenses all of that into one place. Here are a few features that have saved me so much time. They have a library of over 10,000 CAD blocks with top, front, side views, including parametric blocks you can adjust or custom ones generated from images or text prompts through their AI panel, including windows for your elevation drawings. You can visualize drawings with different materials and finishes and do transformations that would normally take forever. You can also apply custom properties to elements and automatically generate link tables for specs, quantities, and cost summaries. No more manually updating procurement lists. And because it's cloud-based, your whole team can collaborate in real time from the same source. So if you want to play around with your composition very easily, try it for free with a link in the description below, but only after you're done watching this video. Don't leave any visible elevation blank just because it's not the primary facade. A blank side elevation reduces natural light inside the house, limits cross-ventilation, and creates rooms that feel gloomy and unbalanced. Basically, when you're given a choice between going to a room with light on multiple sides versus light on one side, people tend to gravitate towards the room that's lit from multiple sides because it just feels better to be in. The light is softer, more natural. So if you're building a house and you leave one facade completely void of windows, you're really missing an opportunity here to make the corner rooms very, very comfortable. And Jane Jacobs, she observed that windows create natural surveillance, what she called eyes on the street, which helps make public spaces feel safer and more vibrant. So if you have a corner house on the street, adding in more windows rather than leaving the facade blank can also help your neighborhood and the street landscape feel a lot more humane, safe, and vibrant. And wouldn't we love to live in that sort of neighborhood rather than a neighborhood where everything feels blank and blocked off? Keep an eye on your sill heights too. Don't set them too high. Your windowsill is also your eye line from the sofa. So if you set it too high like they do in a lot of modern buildings, you've basically designed yourself a very expensive view of a wall. When we use the window to look outside, we feel most comfortable when we can see both the sky and the ground, and having high windowsills cuts off the view of the ground, so you only get half your money's worth. If at this point you've paused the video to look at your own windows right now, I'm sorry, you're probably going to be judging window heights in everyone's homes from now on. In a symmetrical facade, there are basically two ways the design can work. When you have an even number of openings, you create two equal or competing centers. Because no opening is more important than its neighbor, this is called duality. When you have an odd number of openings, one opening lands right in the middle, and that opening usually becomes the front door. The center of it becomes a void, and the eye is just naturally drawn straight to it. This is called unity, and this sort of design generally feels more resolved. Because it becomes obvious what is more important, you know where the focal point is in this elevation. And that's why almost every good traditional main facade uses an odd number of bays. An even number is perfectly fine, but is usually reserved for side or secondary elevations. Duality doesn't only happen side to side. It can also happen floor to floor. If you run the string course, which is a horizontal band to define building levels, exactly in the middle of a two-story house, both floor reads as equal in height. This creates vertical duality and makes the facade feel static. But if you raise the string course slightly, the ground floor becomes more dominant and the composition gains a clearer hierarchy. And this makes the building look better. More emphasis is placed on the more important level. You can take this idea even further with inflection by adjusting the spacing between windows. So in a 5-bay house, perfectly even spacing works, but it can feel a bit rigid. Now if you shift the windows slightly, so if there's a bit more space at the ends, and between the center and the next windows, the center gains more breathing room. This makes the facade more interesting and emphasizes the front door even more. So when it comes to the main facade of your house, favor an odd number of openings and let the most important element, the front door, be clearly emphasized. If you have multiple floors, let the ground floor dominate rather than splitting them equally. And where it makes sense, let the outer elements inflict slightly inward so the whole front leans more towards its own center. Notice that none of these ideas was about how much money you spend or how old the building is. Rather, it came down to whether the buildings make sense to your structural instinct, to your pattern finder, and your desire for order and composition. So take the ideas that fit what you're building and ignore the ones that don't. These are not hard, rigid rules. I just want to bring awareness to them so when you're building something as permanent and expensive as a house, you can make an informed decision and get it right for you. If this video made sense to you, you might want to check out my other videos about how to design a beautiful, feel-good house.